All right, Psalm 19, let's call this one, even though we might want to inherit one way, we actually inherit according to his ways. Why? Because they quite simply age well, which is a term that is often used for concepts, ideas, themes, advertisements, whatever, that actually age well over time. Some themes that I pulled that did not age so well are one advertisement from the makers of aspirin introducing heroin for non-addictive relief from the cough since, I think that's 1898. Not sure that aged well. Another one, by 2005 or so, it will become clear that the internet's impact on the economy has been no greater than the fax machines. Nobel Prize winning economist Paul Krugman from 1998. From The Guardian, 2014, I think it is, a British or a UK newspaper, it says, Facebook will lose 80% of users by 2017, says Princeton researchers. And finally, video games, just a passing fad, top toy company executive says back in 1977, according to the Tampa Times. None of those seem to age well, and that's not to poke fun of them, because we have a wisdom at its best that will not age well over the long haul. Meaning we might say some smart things in one or two instances, but if we keep talking, we're going to say some things that don't age well. And the thing that distinguishes God's wisdom, or the wisdom of his ways, is, as David noticed in the past chapter, or chapter 18, they prove true. Ultimately, that breaks down in chapter 19 in this way. It starts off with talking about the ways in which the things that he has created provide evidence, not only of his power, a power that exceeds our own, but there's an organization in our environment that actually makes it fit for our existence. Going back to some things we noticed in Psalm chapter 8. And so we'll spend more time focusing on the second and third sections of Psalm chapter 19. The second section focusing on his ways in particular, talking about the law of the Lord, not just the law, but the testimony of the Lord, his precepts, commandments, the fear of the Lord, and his rules. And once again, we said the whole concept of rules can get pretty dry if we don't understand the value. And that is the insight that this chapter seems to give, because it's not just talking about the value of being good according to God's ways. It's talking about what his ways actually produce. Some benefits internal, others external. When it says they both revive and rejoice, meaning in circumstances where circumstances or your situation justifies you being down or flat out wanting to give up, it gives you the ability to rejoice in situations where people would otherwise say that person should be down or just give up. And so it's akin to what the word calls in other places, the peace that surpasses understanding, or may seem to defy conventional wisdom, but it also has external value that chapter 19 identifies as making wise, enlightening, and enduring, meaning there is a temporary wisdom, meaning all these people with these famous quotes or advertisements, they didn't become famous because they never said smart things. They said things that endured for a while. But the more they kept talking, the more their human frailties came to the surface, as happens with each and every one of us. And what David is helping us to understand is that God's wisdom adds something to human reasoning that makes it age well, understanding that he says it doesn't just make wise, it doesn't just enlighten or make things seem crystal clear, it does it in a way that actually endures, as we see in the third section of this chapter that goes on to talk about some enduring wisdom that David is praying for so that he can have the kind of success that doesn't simply last for a moment, as the failing or failed kings of Israel realized, but he has the kind of success that God actually promised him, basically a place on Israel's throne forever. And so he raises the question toward the end of the chapter in verse 12, who can discern his errors, understanding that we all act in ways that really don't afford us the ability, if we really think about it, to understand the ripple effects of our actions on the people around us, and more importantly, the generations that come after us. And so he goes on to ask God, please declare me innocent of hidden faults, not so much the things that I'm concealing, but the things that I might not even be aware that I'm doing wrong to the people around me. That is enduring wisdom, wisdom that aged well, as he goes on to ask God to keep back his servant from presumptuous sins, or those times in which I am moving full speed ahead, my whole being based upon partial information that's honestly inadequate for me to make a rational decision. And so he understands, once again, some principles that aged well. We could all benefit from a sight line that goes beyond what we can see, so that as we move forward, we're making decisions that actually don't harm those around us in ways we never intended. And then finally, when he asks God to let the words of his mouth and the meditations of his heart be acceptable in God's sight, he is understanding the level of consistency that we still appreciate today, because counselors to this day make a lot of money trying to bring our personalities in line with our characters. Meaning, personality is that thing that we project consciously, the thing that we want people to see about us. However, character is who we really are. And counselors can make a whole lot of money trying to bring people's personalities in line with their characters. A valuable trait that David asked God to help him align when he said, God, let the words of my mouth, the things that I say externally, and the things that I meditate on, be consistently pleasing to you, helping us once again understand in Psalm 19 the way in which we, even at our wisest, are going to say some things that quite simply don't age well. But inheriting according to God's ways comes along with a wisdom that ages well throughout every generation.